I used to think my story would be a simple one. Boy meets girl. They fall in love. They build a life together. But real life isn't a fairy tale. And sometimes, the person you trust most is the one who ends your peace forever. My name's Ethan, and until a year ago, I thought I was one of the lucky ones. I had a good job, a small apartment in the city, and a father who, despite his flaws, always pushed me to do better. My mom passed when I was 15, so it had just been me and Dad since then. He was strict, distant, always working, but deep down, I believed he cared. And then came Maya. I met her at a community charity event. She was helping an elderly woman lift a box of food supplies, her hair falling over her face, that warm little smile never fading. I don't know what made me walk over. Maybe it was her laugh, maybe her eyes, but something pulled me in. "Hey, need a hand?" I asked. She looked up, smiled, and said softly, "Only if you promise not to drop it." That was the first time I laughed that hard in months. We talked that whole afternoon. She told me about her job as a freelance designer, her dreams to open her own studio, her love for old music. She was funny, confident, and had this calmness that felt rare. It didn't take long. A few days later, we were talking every night. A few weeks later, every morning. And before I knew it, she was part of my life in ways I didn't even understand yet. She became my peace. The kind of person who made silence feel safe. The kind of woman you could imagine growing old with. 6 months into our relationship, I told my father about her. He was sitting in his study, going through paperwork, glasses on, always buried in something. I still remember how nervous I was, standing there like a teenager again. "Dad," I said, "I think I've met someone. Her name's Maya. Special." He looked up, expression unreadable. Then, after a pause, he smiled faintly and said, "Finally, maybe she'll teach you to slow down a little." I laughed awkwardly. That was his version of approval. He wasn't an emotional man. Affection wasn't his language. But deep down, I was relieved, because I thought, for once, he was happy for me. A few weeks later, I brought Maya home for dinner. She wore a simple blue dress, the kind that matched her eyes. My father greeted her with that calm, polite tone he always used in business meetings. At first, the evening was perfect. They talked about art, travel, even literature. I remember sitting there, smiling, thinking, this is it. My past struggles, my heartbreaks, they all led to this peace. Dad seemed genuinely charmed. Maya, as always, handled herself with grace and kindness. By the end of dinner, he said, "You've chosen well, son," and I believed him. God, I wish I hadn't. Weeks went by, everything felt perfect. Too perfect, maybe. But then, small things began to change, barely noticeable at first. Maya started texting less during the day. Our calls grew shorter. She'd cancel plans, saying she was tired or busy. I told myself it was work stress, that every relationship had ups and downs. But something about her tone felt off colder, and every time she smiled now, it felt like she was hiding something behind it. One evening, I got a text from my father. "Dinner tomorrow. Bring Maya if she's free." I smiled. Maybe this would help. Maybe spending time together would bring us all closer. But the next day, Maya said she couldn't make it. She had to visit her mother, so I went alone. Dinner with Dad was uneventful until he mentioned her name. "How's Maya doing?" he asked casually, sipping his wine. "Busy," I replied. "She's been swamped with clients lately." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "You know, she's got a good head on her shoulders. Reminds me of your mother in some ways." That sentence stopped me. Dad never compared anyone to Mom, ever. And for a split second, I saw something in his eyes, something I couldn't quite name. Pride, admiration, or something else. I brushed it off. Because why would I ever think anything wrong? After all, he was my father, and she was the woman I loved. To people I trusted most in this world. To people who, I believed, could never hurt me. A few days after that dinner, I noticed something small, something ordinary, but it stayed with me. Maya had started wearing perfume I didn't recognize. It wasn't the floral scent I'd given her on her birthday. It was sharper, heavier, more mature. When I teased her about it, she smiled and said, "Just trying something new." I believed her. Of course I did. That's what love does. It makes you blind to the details that later become evidence. Over the next few weeks, things continued to shift. She seemed distracted during our conversations, her eyes somewhere else even when she was with me. Sometimes I'd call and she wouldn't answer. Then hours later she'd text, "Sorry, I was caught up in something important." Important. That word began to sting, because suddenly I didn't feel like I was part of whatever important meant anymore. Then came the first real sign, a small coincidence that shouldn't have meant anything, but did. One evening I stopped by my father's house unannounced. I wanted to borrow a few of my mom's old photo albums for a project Maya was helping me with. As I walked into the living room, I noticed 2 coffee mugs on the table. One was Dad's usual black, with the gold R engraved on it. The other was pink, floral, and still warm. I frowned. Dad wasn't the kind of man who had visitors, not personal ones. "Someone over?" I asked casually. He didn't look up from his laptop. "Just a business associate. She left a few minutes ago." "She?" I repeated. "Yes," he said, without missing a beat. "Designer? We're working on an office renovation project." I remember standing there, trying to process his calm tone. A designer. Maya was a designer too, but I didn't say it. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Oh, must have been a coincidence." He smiled faintly, still typing. "The world's full of them, son. Coincidences." Funny how that word feels harmless until it starts repeating itself. A week later, Maya mentioned something that made my stomach twist. We were sitting in her apartment, watching a movie. Out of nowhere, she said, "You know, your father's actually quite interesting. He has this calm energy. Makes you want to listen when he speaks." I looked at her. "How do you know that?" I asked, half joking. She smiled quickly, too quickly. "Oh, just from that dinner. I mean, he's different. Old school, but respectable." It should have ended there. But that night, as I tried to sleep, her words echoed in my head. "He makes you want to listen." Why was she still thinking about that dinner weeks later? Days passed, and I tried to let it go. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was tired, overthinking, maybe even insecure. But something in her eyes had changed. That softness I fell for was fading into something colder, more calculating. It's strange how you can love someone deeply and still feel them slipping away inch by inch. Like watching your favorite song being rewritten by someone else. One Friday evening, she texted, "Busy night ahead, can't meet. Maybe tomorrow." I didn't question it. But later that night, I got a call from my father. "Ethan, can you drop by tomorrow morning? I need help with some reports." His voice was calm, nothing unusual, but I heard something in the background. A faint, familiar laugh. Maya's laugh. I froze, phone in hand, pretending not to notice. Maybe it was the TV, I thought. Maybe I was hearing things. But my instincts, those quiet little voices we all ignore, whispered otherwise. The next day, I went to his house early, too early. The front door was unlocked, unusual for him. I stepped inside. The living room was clean, but the air smelled faintly of Maya's perfume. That same new perfume, the one she claimed she'd just started using. I stood there, heart pounding. Every logical part of me screamed to stop, to not look deeper. But logic never wins against suspicion. So I looked around, and there it was. A pink hair tie sitting on the edge of the couch. I picked it up, feeling the rubber between my fingers. I knew that hair tie. I'd bought it for her during our beach trip, and in that moment, everything, every excuse, every coincidence fell apart. I left before anyone saw me. I didn't confront him. I didn't text her. I just drove for hours until the city lights blurred into nothing. My heart was racing, but my mind was empty. How could this be happening? How could the 2 people I trusted most be hiding something from me? I tried convincing myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she dropped it during a visit. Maybe Dad was right. Coincidences happen. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Something was wrong. Something ugly, something unforgivable, hiding just beneath the surface. And no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I could feel it. The walls of my perfect little world were starting to crack. When trust breaks, it doesn't shatter in one moment. It cracks quietly, invisibly, like glass under pressure. You don't see it right away. Until it cuts you. After that day at my father's house, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her hair tie on his couch. I kept hearing her voice, her laugh, her perfume, all mixed with the echo of his calm tone. Just a business associate. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe her, but my heart refused to listen. The next morning, I called Maya. "Hey," I said softly. "How was your night yesterday?" She paused for a second. I could hear her thinking. Then came her reply, "It was okay. I stayed home mostly. Just worked on a few design samples." Her tone was smooth, calm to calm. "Did you talk to my dad recently?" I asked, pretending to sound casual. Another pause. "Your dad?" "No. Why would I?" And right there I felt it, that tiny shake in her voice. The kind people make when they're constructing lies carefully, brick by brick. I ended the call early, pretending everything was fine. But inside, something broke quietly. The part of me that used to trust without proof. For the next few days, I tried to observe. I didn't confront her. Didn't ask questions. I just watched and listened, and the more I paid attention, the clearer it became. Her texts were timed too perfectly. Her excuses rehearsed. Her affection mechanical. It wasn't just absence anymore. It was avoidance. One evening, I told her I was going out of town for 2 days, a business trip. It was a lie, of course. But I needed to see something real. She smiled faintly and said, "That's fine. I'll probably stay home and work on some proposals." "Yeah?" I asked. "Alone?" She laughed lightly, of course. "Who else?" I smiled back. But my heart was screaming, "You'll show me the truth now." That night, I parked my car 2 streets away from her apartment. I sat there, in the dark, watching her building. Hours passed. Lights went off, one by one. At 10:47 p.m., her door opened. Maya stepped out, wearing a long coat, her hair tied back. She looked around once, cautious, then started walking toward the main road. I followed from a distance. She stopped at a familiar corner and got into a car. My father's car, that black Mercedes I'd seen all my life, unmistakable. The license plate, the way it glided through the road, I knew it like the back of my hand. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, watching the red taillights disappear into the night. I followed, far enough to stay hidden, close enough to never lose sight. They drove toward the outskirts of the city, where my father's private office was, a building he rarely used anymore, or so I thought. The car stopped in front of it. They both got out. She looked nervous. He looked calm. He opened the door for her, like a gentleman, and she smiled. That same smile she once gave me. I waited in my car, engine off, heart pounding. Minutes turned into hours. The building lights went out at midnight, and when they finally came out, they didn't look like coworkers. He touched her arm, guiding her gently. She looked up at him, smiled again. I felt like my world tilted sideways, like gravity had shifted, and I was falling with no ground beneath me. They drove off together, and I just sat there, frozen, broken, quiet. You always think betrayal will come with screaming, fights, maybe even tears. But sometimes it comes in silence, like a knife sliding in without sound. I didn't confront them that night. I couldn't, because part of me still hoped there was a mistake, that I was wrong, that maybe, somehow, there was another explanation. But when I drove home and saw her message waiting for me, a simple, "Good night, love. Miss you already," I realized she wasn't just lying. She was pretending to still be mine while being someone else's. That night, I sat in my car for hours, thinking, replaying every memory. Her laughter, her kindness, the way she used to hold my hand, all poisoned now with doubt. I didn't cry, not because I didn't want to, but because pain that deep doesn't need tears. It burns from the inside out. That was the night the old me began to die. The man who believed in trust, family, love, gone. All that was left was silence. And within that silence, something new began to form. Not anger, not hatred, just purpose. A quiet promise to myself. You'll learn the truth, every piece of it. And when you do, no one will ever lie to you again. That was the first crack. And cracks, when left alone, don't heal. They spread until everything you once believed in collapses. After that night, silence became my companion. I didn't confront Maya. I didn't speak to my father. I just watched. People think revenge begins with rage, but it doesn't. It begins with observation. For the next few days, I acted normal. I texted her as usual, smiled when we met, even laughed at her jokes. But behind that smile, my mind was working, replaying every moment, analyzing every word. And soon, I started noticing things that I had once ignored. Whenever I mentioned my father, she changed the topic. Whenever he called me, She glanced at my phone, pretending not to care. And once, I caught her reading a message that wasn't meant for her. "Who's that?" she asked, acting casual. "My father," I said. She nodded, looked away, but her eyes didn't match her calm. They looked scared. That night, I checked my father's messages to old ones, months back. Most were busy, until I found something strange. A message from an unknown number. "She's nervous about tomorrow. Don't make her regret it." And my father's reply, "She won't. She trusts me." The date, a week before Maya and I officially got engaged. I stared at the screen for minutes. My chest felt heavy. Could it be her? Could she have known him even before us? I tried to convince myself it wasn't, that it was some misunderstanding. But then, I remembered something else. Months ago, before I proposed to Maya, I had asked her once, "How did you get to know about my family business?" And she smiled that gentle, careful smile. "Oh, just heard from a mutual friend." Why, I didn't think much of it then. But now, that answer felt rehearsed. Like a script she had practiced long before I ever asked. The puzzle pieces started falling into place. And every piece hurt more than the last. She wasn't just with me. She was using me. And my father? Maybe he wasn't innocent either. Maybe I had been nothing more than the bridge between them. A tool. One evening, I decided to test something. I told Maya I had a surprise dinner planned. Something special for just us. I said I'd pick her up at 8, but at 7:30, I called my father instead. "Hey, Dad, are you free tonight?" "Not really, son," he said. "Got a business dinner to attend." I smiled. "Business dinner, huh?" At 8:05, I parked near her apartment again. Her lights were off. No one home. And guess which car was missing from my father's driveway? The same black Mercedes. That was the confirmation I didn't want, but needed. I didn't cry this time. I didn't shake, didn't scream. I just sat there in silence and accepted it. The two people I loved most, the woman I was ready to spend my life with, and the man I had looked up to all my life, had built their truth on my blindness. You know what's strange? When betrayal comes from strangers, it hurts your heart, but when it comes from blood, it poisons your soul. That night, I went back home and sat in front of the mirror. And I didn't see myself anymore. I saw a stranger, quiet, broken, but awake. I whispered to him, "You've seen enough. Now it's time to act." But not in anger. Not in chaos. In control. Because revenge isn't about shouting or hurting. It's about making them feel the silence they gave you. They thought I'd never find out. They thought their lies were perfect. But the thing about lies is, no matter how soft they're spoken, they always echo. And I was ready to follow that echo, wherever it led. After that night, everything inside me changed. The pain didn't disappear. It simply turned into silence. A cold, steady silence that felt sharper than anger. That's when I realized something. I didn't want to confront them. I wanted them to expose themselves. I began by pretending nothing had changed. I still visited Maya, smiled at her door, brought her flowers. I still called my father on weekends, talked about work, about life. To them, I was the same Ethan, kind, trusting, loyal. But inside, I was already building something else. A plan. A quiet, invisible web that neither of them could see. First, I needed proof. Not assumptions, not emotions, evidence. Because betrayal only hurts once. But exposing it, that's justice. I created a new email account, one that no one knew about. I connected it to a cloud drive for storing videos, messages, everything I could gather. Then I installed a small tracker app on Maya's phone the next time she handed it to me to play music in her car. I hated myself for doing it, but I hated her lies even more. The following week, patterns started forming again. Late-night calls, unexplained meetings, and one message that finally broke the surface. "I'll see you tomorrow. Same place." He suspects nothing. No name, no photo, but the contact name said it all. "Dad," that message replayed in my head 100 times. Same place. Where was that? I checked her map history, a cafe near the edge of the city. A quiet place by the river, one I had shown her months ago when we were first dating, a place that meant something to me. Now it meant something else entirely. That night, I sat alone in my room. I stared at my phone, watching the clock tick toward midnight. The ache was gone now. Only purpose remained. They wanted to keep me in the dark. I'd let them, but on my terms. I started thinking about all those nights. My father would come home late from business meetings. How Maya would text me saying she was too tired to meet. It all connected now, perfectly, painfully. And yet, part of me still wanted to know why. Why my own father? Was it power, money, or was it just betrayal for the thrill of it? I didn't know, but I would soon. The next morning, I sent her a text. Hope you're free tomorrow night. I want to talk about something important. She replied instantly. Of course. I can't wait. Her words were sweet, but her timing betrayed her. She didn't realize I already knew she had a meeting at the River Cafe earlier that day. The next day, I arrived there early. Not to confront, not yet. I parked my car where they couldn't see me and waited. At exactly 6:15 p.m., Maya's car arrived. 5 minutes later, my father's. The two of them sat by the same window I once held her hand at. She smiled at him. He reached across the table. I felt my heartbeat slow down. Not from shock anymore, but from confirmation. The truth was no longer invisible. It was sitting right there, sipping coffee. I recorded everything, every look, every laugh, every moment that once belonged to me. And as I watched, I didn't feel love anymore, only clarity. They thought I was broken, but I was already rebuilding myself, stronger, colder, and smarter. That night, I uploaded the footage to my hidden drive. Then I wrote one single line in my journal. They wanted secrets. I'll give them consequences. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about patience. And I was patient now more than ever. Because sometimes, the most dangerous man in the room is the one who's already been betrayed. The next morning, I woke up early. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel pain, just purpose. They wanted to play games in the dark. Fine, but I would be the one turning on the lights. My plan wasn't about shouting or exposing them immediately. It was about making them believe their lives were falling apart on their own. That's the beauty of silence. It makes people panic in their own guilt. So I began small, very small. I sent my father a message. Dad, I might need your advice soon. Maya's been acting strange lately. I think she's hiding something. Just one line, simple, harmless, but enough to plant a seed. He replied a few minutes later, I'm sure it's nothing, son. Don't overthink. That quick response told me everything. He was nervous. Too quick, too defensive. Then I texted Maya. My father asked about you today. He said you seemed quiet last time you met him. Another harmless line, but her reaction was even better. She instantly called me, voice shaking slightly. He mentioned me. What did he say? Nothing much, I said casually. Did something happen between you two? Long pause. Too long, no? Nothing like that, she said. Her tone was flat, rehearsed. In less than a day, they both started second-guessing themselves. Doubt is powerful. It eats through the strongest lies, faster than truth ever could. I just had to feed it slowly. Over the next few days, I kept the pressure subtle. I stopped answering Maya's messages right away. When she asked to meet, I made excuses. At home, I avoided my father's gaze. And every small distance I created made them more desperate to stay in control. That was my first win. Then came the second move, making them turn on each other. I created a fake email account, using a random name. From it, I sent my father an anonymous message. Someone knows what you've been doing. Stop meeting her before it's too late. And that same night, I sent Maya another. He's lying to you. He's not who you think he is. I imagined the panic that must have spread in their minds that night. Two people who trusted each other in secrecy. Now afraid of being found out, it wasn't just revenge anymore. It was strategy, and I was winning. A few days later, my father looked different, distracted, tired. He barely spoke at dinner. Maya seemed distant too, her texts shorter, her voice uncertain. They were falling apart, piece by piece, and all I had to do was watch. But something unexpected happened to me. In the middle of all this chaos, I started missing the old me, the person who believed in love, the son who trusted his father, the man who thought loyalty still meant something. Now, I was a stranger to myself, a calm face hiding a storm inside. And yet, I couldn't stop. Because I wasn't done, the next step was riskier, but necessary. I needed them to see each other through my eyes. So I invited them both to dinner together. Let's have a small family evening, I said, just to relax. They hesitated at first, but guilt makes people predictable, and both of them said yes. That dinner would be the first time they sat together in my presence since everything began. And neither of them knew that the real reason wasn't reunion. It was exposure. They thought they still controlled the story, but I was already the writer, and this dinner was the first chapter of their ending. The night of the dinner arrived, I cleaned my apartment meticulously. Every chair in its place, every plate polished, candles ready. To an outsider, it would look like a warm, cozy evening. To them, it would feel normal, because the most dangerous traps are the ones that look safe. Maya arrived first, smiling that same practiced smile that had once melted my heart. She stepped inside and whispered, "It smells wonderful. You really didn't have to do this." I nodded politely. Just wanted to have a quiet evening together. Nothing fancy. Her eyes darted to the table, the candles, then quickly back to mine. She didn't notice the small camera I had placed discreetly on the bookshelf. My father arrived 5 minutes later, briefcase in hand. He set it down, removed his coat, and smiled, polite. "Dinner smells great, son," he said. I nodded. "Thanks, Dad. Please, sit." We started with small talk. The weather, work, the usual polite conversation. But beneath the surface, every glance, every pause, every laugh was a test. Maya reached for the salad and smiled at my father, a smile she reserved only for him in private, and he responded with that subtle hand movement I had seen at the River Cafe, guiding, protective, intimate. I pretended not to notice. I poured wine slowly, cleared my throat. Every movement measured, every word deliberate. "I was thinking," I said lightly, "it's strange how little we know about each other sometimes, even family." A tiny comment, harmless on the surface, but it planted a seed. Both of them stiffened. Then came the main course. I served the food. We ate quietly, and with every bite, I studied them. Maya, acting natural, but checking her phone repeatedly. My father, sipping wine, avoiding eye contact with her. The tension was like a live wire. You could feel it crackle in the air. Halfway through, I spoke again. Funny, isn't it? How some people hide things even in front of those closest to them. Maya froze. Her fork hovered in the air. My father's hand tightened around his glass. "I mean," I continued calmly, "we think we know people, until one day we realize we barely know ourselves." The silence after my words was deafening. Every tick of the clock seemed amplified. Every breath they took, measured, careful, guilty. I watched them like a hawk, the way their eyes avoided mine, the way their hands trembled slightly, the way guilt revealed itself in subtle ways. A twitch, a glance. I didn't say a word about the River Cafe. I didn't mention the messages, the hair tie, the texts. I didn't have to, because the truth was already in the room. Then I added one final touch. I casually mentioned a friend, someone who had seen things. "I met someone recently. Funny how people notice what you think you hide. Strange, isn't it?" Maya's hand dropped slightly, almost knocking over her wine glass. My father's fork paused midair. They looked at each other briefly, and in that split second, their faces said everything. Fear, guilt, recognition. We finished dinner quietly. No words, no confrontations. Just plates cleared, candles blown out, and the air heavy with unspoken truth. When they left, I walked them to the door. Polite smiles, polite goodbyes, and as I closed the door, I whispered to myself, they feel it now. The first taste of what betrayal costs. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, and for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt power, not the kind that comes from violence, but the kind that comes from knowing the truth and making others live it quietly. The first move was complete. The game had begun, and they had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. The next few days were enlightening.